The Passionate Leader, because leadership without passion is just a title.
Meeting. We got a collapse in the garage. Get the squad back equipment in here. We got an I-beam gone to a firefighter.
Get that island urgent. Transmit a second along.
This is where titles end and leadership begins. Ask yourself this: are you leading with standards or managing comfort and calling it leadership? Because real leadership is not about being liked. It is about having the conversations others avoid, holding the line when it gets uncomfortable, and building teams that actually perform. Today's guest is Jason Goggins. He's a senior executive director with a Chick-fil-A restaurant organization and the owner of Black Wolf Leadership and Business Coaching. He brings 25 years of experience as a business owner, primarily in the gym space, and at the last 8 years coaching leaders and organizations that are serious about accountability, performance, and sustainable growth. Originally hired as a leadership coach for a Chick-fil-A operator, Jason was later asked to help lead and strategically guide an organization toward aggressive goals for the next 24 months. His leadership philosophy was forged early. When trying to be liked led to lowered standards and underperforming teams, the lesson was clear. Leadership requires courage, clarity, and consistency. A husband of 24 years, father of 4, and a University of Florida graduate, Jason believes leadership is both personal and organizational, deeply misunderstood, and absolutely worth studying relentlessly. His work focuses on raising standards, developing leaders who can hold them, and reminding people that hard lessons are not setbacks, they are growth. This conversation is about leadership done the hard way, the way that it actually works. Before we do get started and I get Jason to run with this, it is important to note that this guest, Jason today, is the first ever guest we'll have on the Passionate Leader platform that does not have any fire service background. We brought him on because it's imperative that we start to look outside the 4 walls of this community that we call the fire service and understand that the echo chamber we're creating by sustaining those 4 walls is not helping us grow. Today's conversation is all about growth and learning from the outside world perspective. Without further ado, welcome to the Passionate Leader, Jason Goggins. How are you, man?
I'm doing wonderful, man. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
I'm stoked. I love, we said before we started recording, you're very passionate about leadership, and you can't get much more passionate leader-esque than being passionate about leadership. So,
Yeah.
for the audience, I kind of walked you where you were through. So why don't you kind of give us the baby without the 9 months, so to speak, as far as kind of how you got into, started from, gym ownership to all the way into leadership and everything like that.
Yeah. So, we talk about me not being in the fire space. However, I did start my career as a police officer. So they're very akin to each other in many ways. And I graduated the University of Florida, and my goal was to be a federal agent. That's what my dad did. He worked for the DEA. And the goal was to be a federal agent. And at that time, and it still may be the case, you needed 3 years of law enforcement experience to even apply for a federal job. So I became a local police officer in Georgia outside of Atlanta and did that for 5 years and did not love it. I fell out of love with it relatively quickly. It just didn't light me up the way I wanted it to. And a lot of it, honestly, comes down to leadership. And we may or may not be able to touch on some of the things that ran me out in this episode. But,
Sure, yeah.
but I had an amazing leader when I started my career there. And towards the end, I had a horrific leader, and I could not wait to leave as a result of it. So, it's I do have a similar background in that vein. And then I started my first business in 2002. And while I had a side gig up until then, but I actually left and started a business in 2002. I just dated myself there. I am 50 years old. So you look a little bit younger than I do, but
Not much. You only got a decade on me.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, I could tell. So, so I started my first business in 2002, and it was a gym. And then I opened my second gym a couple years after that, sold both of those, and then opened my third gym in 2008. Well, sort of. So it was another side hustle that ended up becoming my third gym in 2011, but we started in 2008. And then I owned that for 7 years, sold it, and I went into the coaching space after that and was coaching people on business growth, business strategy, leadership, things like that. And then I was asked to come on board at Chick-fil-A and do the same. And so that's how I got here. Yeah. And what really pushed me into wanting to teach and coach leadership is the fact that I think the world is so void of it right now. And you talk about
Mhm.
expanding outside of the four walls of the firehouse when you talk about leadership. But one thing's the same whether you're in a firehouse, a business, or your home is you're dealing with people. And I always tell people, you can't manage people. You manage systems, processes, and tasks, but you lead people. And we need to lead people at home, at work, no matter where we work and what the business we conduct within the four walls is. So it expands into every territory of your life. And I know John Maxwell said everything rises and falls on leadership, and I read that many years ago, and it really resonated with me. And many years later, I can tell you everything rises and falls on leadership. So
Oh, man,
yeah,
that's deep, dude. So when you were, we can kind of back up a little bit and kind of
yeah.
talking, to the law enforcement side, um, without probably getting into, the detail, the mundane details. Was part of the, I mean, part of the reason you likely left, you kind of mentioned, was, due to poor leadership. Um, is that sort of where the catalyst began in your, your endeavors to make better leaders and stuff like that, or are the two not, one and the same?
It's an interesting question because it's really both. When I go back to those days, that first leader I talk about, not uncoincidentally, he was my sergeant. And years later, he
Hmm.
went on to be the chief of police in Cobb County, which is a major department outside of Atlanta. And it doesn't surprise me he made it that far up because he was that good of a leader. And
Hmm.
the one that was my leader when I left, it I my guess is this is what you come across in the world of the fire department, but we tend to fall back on the old command and control style of leadership, and that's what that last leader did. I'm your boss. You do what I say. Don't say a word. Even back then, I think things have changed. But when you left the academy and went into on the road with your FTO, your field training officer, even then you were told a recruit is to be seen, not heard. And then from there,
Hmm.
that attitude permeated the entire department. And until you got higher up in the ranks, you were like, shut your mouth, do what you're told. And that violates all laws of human nature. So when I talk about
Hmm.
leadership, that's the vein I talk about it. And the laws of human nature don't cease to exist. So you look at even Maslow's hierarchy of needs from needing food, water, shelter. The next thing above that is belonging, right? And acceptance. And that's the antithesis of that when you have that attitude. And the last leader I had was the worst about it. He was ultimate command and control, and I don't operate like
Hmm.
that. That doesn't resonate well with me. So when I moved on to open my first business, I overcorrected and I wanted to keep all my employees happy. That was my main goal. Keep you happy, keep you happy. And I think there's an element of that that needs to happen in leadership, but what needs to happen more is you need to care. And that
Mm.
that sergeant I had that was went on to be the chief of police, what he did is he cared. And I have a lot of stories, I won't bore the audience with today, but that showed his care. The other leader
Sure.
did not care. And so I think there's an element of leadership where you want your people to be happy, but sometimes you're not going to make them happy when you're being a caring and a kind, what I call kind as opposed to nice leader. So I overcorrected and I saw the downside of that. And over time, many years of doing this, I had to hone it in into what I found the sweet spot of leadership to be. So the journey kind of had its ups and downs like most. Yeah, but that I think my leadership style and philosophies were honed over all the mistakes I made over the years.
Ah, man, I
Yeah.
love it. You just gave me like 12 questions to ask out of one part of
Yeah.
conversation, so it's great. I think the biggest one, and I think everybody experiences it. Anything that's paramilitary is the command and control.
Yeah.
Uh, from your experience, I mean, why do people default back to that sort of um that mentality of do as I say, not as I do kind of leadership?
I think it's twofold. I think the first would be it's all they've ever seen a lot of times. It's
Mm,
what was modeled for them. So when they my philosophy on this is if I'm on the other end of that style of leadership, there's a part of me that can't wait to get into leadership so I can be that guy or girl, right? So I can be the one that
mhm,
is telling people what to do. And I talk about leadership in two ways. You can see getting into an authority role. I hesitate to call it a leadership role because my philosophy also is leadership's not a title, it's not a status, it is not a level of authority, right? It is you can only be a leader if the people that are around you see you as a leader. You don't get to assign
Mm,
yourself the title of leader. So I have to be able to go to the people that I need to follow me and ask them if I'm a leader before I can call myself that. So when I get into that quote unquote leadership rank, if you will, I can do it as a reward. Like, man, I put in all these years, I've worked my butt off, I've been dedicated, I've been this, I am due for this. Okay, that's fine. But you can also do it as a responsibility. I want to get in that role so that I can lead my people better or lead my people properly. And most importantly, so I can serve my people properly. We talk about servant leadership,
mm,
right? You always heard the term, and I think it's redundant. I don't think you can have leadership without service. So the word servant's baked into the word already because leadership without service isn't leadership. So I think that we get into, we are modeled the command and control style of leadership for so long. And I think it beats us down mentally and emotionally so that we finally get in that role. We're going to return the favor, if you will. And the second reason I think people default to
mm.
that is because, let's be honest, it's easy. It's a much easier way to lead. Just shut your mouth and do what you're told is an easier way to lead than building relationships, building trust, showing care, serving,
Yeah.
investing in people, developing them, helping them reach their goals. That's a longer, more arduous road, but it's what you have to do if you really want people to follow.
Mm. Man, 10 minutes in and we're already getting these nuggets.
Yeah.
It's spot on. I think small background, the reason that this platform even exists is because I served under the command and control-esque
Mm.
dictator. I mean, there's no really other way to I equated it to a dictator, dictatorial. Oh my god, that word can't, it's not coming to me. But it that's how I served for the longest time. It was a do as I say, not as I do. Don't ask questions. We do this because I
Mhm.
said so. Do you know how who I am? The point at the chest and all this and the other
Mhm.
stuff. And one of the reasons I wanted to be a leader is to reverse that because that's not it does nothing to suppress people and show because all for me all that shows is just how weak and un professional a person is. It shows how little their capabilities are and how large their ego is. So I dude this is awesome. You hit on kind versus nice. Why don't you kind of expand on what that really means to you and what the viewers can get out of that?
Yeah, and I'll answer that in 1 second if you don't mind, but I wanna extrapolate a little further on the command and control thing,
Yeah.
is I also think people vastly underestimate the
Yeah,
power of
please.
leadership, and as a result of that, they do not develop their leadership skills to the level that they should, and as a result, they don't
Yep.
understand how powerful the style of leadership you and I condone is compared to the command and control. Because I believe command and control leadership or any style of ineffective leadership gets you what I call minimum effective dose. That means people will work just hard enough to either get a
Mm,
paycheck or just hard enough to keep you off their back. But if you want your people to run through a wall for you and show up every day and excel and give everything they've got to the job, you got to give them a reason to do so. And because you told them so is not a good enough reason. So just to encapsulate that conversation a little bit further, but to answer your other question about nice versus kind, so I think a lot of we talk about command and control, right? And that's more of the hard ass style leadership. But sometimes people do overcorrect, or they go into leadership thinking they need to be liked. And I'm a big fan, instead of going for being liked, that you want to be respected. So now we have to build out a formula of what earns respect.
mm,
So that's something we can talk about if we want to. But if we go back to the side of being liked, well, if my goal is to be liked, then and first and foremost, that's a very selfish way to lead, because now you're putting the betterment of others
mhm,
behind your need to be liked. So when I want to be liked, I'm going to be nice. And nice is I'm going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm not going to give you the tough feedback. I'm not going to say something that's going to maybe jeopardize how you feel about me. And when I do that, I'm abdicating my responsibility to tell you what you need to hear. And what you need to hear is the truth. So I think nice is void of truth often, and kind is, hey, I
mm,
love you and care about you enough to be honest with you, even if what I'm about to tell you is painful. Now, on the flip side, I have a responsibility as the deliverer of the message to deliver it the right way. I can't be a jerk about it. But I take the people I coach through a protocol. The three check boxes is if I'm going to give feedback, my intent has to be pure, right? I have to be doing it for the right reason, not because I'm mad, not because I'm frustrated, not because I'm your boss. I need to be giving you the feedback because I truly want to help you. If I've checked that box, now I need to make sure that I have the
Mm.
credibility to be giving this feedback. Am I the guy or girl that should be giving this feedback? All right. So, I mean, if I'm going to tell you, JP, about how to be a fireman, well, I may have the best intent in the world, but I don't know anything about being a fireman, so I'm not the credible person to give it to you. And then the third checkbox is my delivery. I have
Sure.
to do yeah, I've got to deliver the feedback appropriately. And that sometimes it's going to be a little bit softer, sometimes it's got to be harsher.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, if I check those three boxes, then I'm doing my end of the bargain. And that is I'm delivering the message that I need to deliver the right way to make you better. And that is being kind. And sometimes when I give you that feedback, you're not going to like me very much in that
Mm.
moment. You may walk away very angry with me. And as a leader, we got to be okay with that. So, and I find, if you got the command and control that's too harsh about it, then you got the overcorrection of I want to be super nice, so I don't make people upset, make people mad, and neither one of those are effective leadership styles.
Mm. How often do you see people sort of live in that gap of not wanting to have the hard conversations because they want to be liked, but being like, man, I'm a little too pushy as a leader.
You saw how often do I see those leadership styles? Do I come across those?
Mm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
very often, I ask people all the time, go back in your mind and the totality of your life, and how many amazing leaders have you known? And I'll either get 0, 1, every now and again, I'll get a 2. So what does that tell you? That means in people's lives, they're lucky if they have one great leader in their life. So that means most people are getting
Mm.
it wrong, but I don't think they get it wrong because they don't have the ability to. I'm not one that believes that leadership is a natural born gift. I think it's honed and developed because it's a skill or a series or set of skills. So I think anyone can be a great leader if you just understand the power of it and you invest in yourself in learning how to be one. Anybody can be great, but I don't think there's that many people out there willing to do
Mm.
that because, like I said earlier, it's easier to do it the other ways. Being a leader, I heard somebody say one time that leaders never have 2 good days in a row, like real leaders, because it's a heavy burden to carry when you try to do it the right way. And I think people run away from that and they either want to be
Mm.
super nice because it's easy or they want to be a hard ass because that's easier. But that other sweet spot in the middle is where you really want to be.
That's that's a damn good analogy about not having 2 good days in a row. It's
Yeah.
true. I, so personal experience, I started, just like in the police force, there's different levels of leadership and responsibility in the fire service. I've found so far that the first level is our lieutenant. So you're responsible for your engine company worth of men and women. The next step up, you're a captain. So now you're in charge of your lieutenants. Once you get hired, being in charge of other leaders within an organization, it can be an extremely challenging and hard task to undertake because what I've found is some of the times when I have to talk with another leader about, certain things, I'm like, man, I'm talking more to a peer and be like, you should know this. And I think that's where some people
Mm.
have probably failed. So kind of along that lines, where have you sort of seen, kind of the biggest gap where in it when I say the word failure, I guess probably the better analogy is have missed the mark. So where's one of the bigger gaps you've seen that leaders have been sort of missing the mark as far as execution?
I think I watched one of your videos the other day that you talked about the big 3-letter word that holds everyone back from being a great leader, and that's ego. You talk about why should they know better or why don't they know these things? I think the things we've outlined already is what holds people back from being a great leader. What keeps them or makes them continue to be a poor leader is ego. It's it, humility. I have my core 4 of leadership, and you have to have all 4 of these if you're going to be a great leader. And the first is humility, second is emotional intelligence, the third is being growth minded, so we develop ourselves, and the fourth is authentic. Right, we got to lead as ourselves. We can't try to be somebody we're not because people see right through
Mhm.
that. But that first one's humility. Right, and what humility does is it opens our mind, expands our horizons to hey, there might be a better way. right? It enables us to look out at our people and realize, hey, they're not doing the things I need them to do. And what poor leaders do is when the team's not executing like they want them to, they look out and say it's their fault. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. They're not listening. What a great leader does is takes ownership and looks in the mirror and says, "What am I not doing so that they won't listen to me, or so that they're not doing what I need them to do?" But that takes humility, right? You have to be able to admit that maybe there's a better way, and maybe the way that you thought was the right way is no longer the right way. Another thing humility does it invites growth. Because if I am stuck in my ways and I think, no, my way is the right way, the only way, and I can't handle being told differently, then why would I pick up a book? Why would I listen to the Passionate Leader podcast? Why would I want to grow and expand? I've already got it figured out.
Mm.
So ego stops you dead in your tracks as a leader. It stops you dead in your tracks in so many ways in your life. And again, this permeates into your personal life, as well as your professional life. So I think that the biggest hindrance to great leadership is almost always ego.
Oh, you nailed it. I love it. I think one thing, the authenticity is huge. And I we do a lot in the fire service. There are a lot of through social media, anybody can go out, buy a microphone and some headphones and launch stuff. And it's the authenticity that people can see. Where I guess it's not more of a question, I guess more of a comment, I guess, is that, at least in the fire service where I have seen is, we used to be back in the day, people would, again, back to control and command, where it's like, we do it this way because I said so, and nobody asked. And I feel that at least within the fire service, people are becoming more intelligent. And they're like, well, why do we do it that way? Why do we do
Mm,
this? Why do we do that?
mhm,
And at least where I've seen some of those command and control type leaders is it blows holes in the narrative where
mhm.
they're like, well, shoot, I can't blow the smoke up their backside this time because they just called me out on my stuff. Have you seen that in other realms in leadership in you know, different arenas, so to speak?
I think it's incredibly common what you just said because it blows a hole in the narrative, as you said, but at the same time, I'm gonna go back to the ego word because it also means that if my people have opinions
Mm.
and newsflash, they've always had opinions, right? And they just never felt comfortable sharing them. And I'll say this too about I'll say this too about people's opinions and feedback. I think as a leader, and any leader listen to this, if I could instill anything in you today, it would be that feedback is your currency. It is the most valuable thing you can have as a leader is feedback, not just on the way things are done, but also yourself. And when ego is in play, then I put a wall between me and my people, and I no longer get feedback. I no longer create the safety needed for them to give me feedback. And sometimes when people hear the word safety, they think it's soft. Well, you can think that if you want, but this is what the greatest
Mm.
leaders do: is they create an environment that feedback can flow. Well, if I'm scared that if I give you feedback, you're going to jump down my throat, if I'm scared that you're going to treat me differently, you're going to resent me, it's going to stop a promotion, it's going to get me reassigned, all those things. If I have that fear, I'm not going to give you feedback. And as a leader, you just lost the most important currency you have because great leaders make great decisions. Good luck making great decisions with incomplete data, and feedback is data. So, first and foremost, you have to create an environment where that's
Mm.
going on. Well, ego is what stops that because if I allow you to give me feedback or I make it safe for you to, or I create the environment where giving me feedback's okay, you might tell me something that I have to now admit that I got wrong. And I'd rather have the ego and put the wall up than have to admit that I was wrong or there was a better way to do it. But at the end of the day, that is again, ego is a very selfish
Mm.
notion, right? Our job as leaders is there's a mission. Whatever that mission is in your organization, we have a mission. And everybody in that organization needs to be moving towards that mission. Well, if we're going to be successful in that mission, then we need everyone on the same page. We need to understand each other. We need to you have feedback flowing. We need all those things. And we need ego out of the way. The minute I put ego in, I'm making it about me and I'm no longer making it about the mission. And that is the thing that's a
Mm.
human nature thing that again that permeates every organization, every household in existence if we allow it to.
Dude. freaking deep. I love it. So another God, I mean, it's ego really does. I mean, and it's we could paraphrase everybody in the world. Egos eat brains. There really is. I experience it every single day. I'll put something
Mhm.
out on social media, and there's always somebody that has to try to tear down or pick apart what I say. And I'll
Yeah.
be 100% honest. Everything that I speak of has either been from personal experience, experiences from friends, or I just search social media and it's like, oh, this isn't, it's experiences that people have lived. And there's always got to be somebody that's got to kind of troll and make
Mhm.
themselves kind of feel like the bigger person. Because the moment that we can get rid of ego, and I don't think we ever really will, because I think gosh, I wish I could remember who said it, but generally speaking, for the most part, yes, there are some leaders who are like how we spoke about it earlier. I became a leader because I wanted people to listen to me. Well, it doesn't matter whether you're a leader or not; they're not going to listen to you regardless. They do not care
Mhm.
about the title after your last name, or the your prefix name of the Sir Mix-a-Lot or whatever, whatever the case is. So um it's it boils down to that I lost my train of thought, honestly, but
Yeah.
it's the ego in the room. That if we can just get rid of that, right? Because but the problem is again, people, they want to feel important, they want to be the biggest mover and shaker in the world, and I feel it's the same way in the leadership world. Um, One thing that actually came to me is in through conversations with others that I was having somebody in the leadership world on is a lot of times people will kind of use the analogy that being a leader is sort of like being the parent of the group. Do you buy into that, or is it sort of just one of those feel good fluff factors?
I would have to know what they mean by parent, because there's a lot of ways to parent. If
Sure.
yeah, I look at it this way. So leadership, this is the balance we're all trying to strike as leaders. Because so far everything we talked about is manage your ego, care for your people, serve your people. And a fair question to ask in this situation is, well, what about standards? Right? What about, living up to
Mm,
standards and having accountability? And that's a very fair question. I think what a command and control leader thinks is I've got to be that way to maintain the standard. And what I tell people is actually the balance is, can you do both? Great leaders can do both. They actually build the relationships, build the trust, serve their team,
mm,
allow the team to influence them, invest in their team. You talked about people wanting to be a leader to be important. Well, what great leaders do is they don't worry about their importance. They try to make the people around them more important. And that rising tide lifts all ships. So at the end of the day, it depends what kind of parent you are. But if I'm building a relationship with my kids, I'm building trust with my kids, I'm investing in my kids, but I'm maintaining the standard. We have a standard in our house.
mm.
We're going to live up to that standard. And when you don't, that's where the nice first kind comes in. I'm going to be kind. That means I'm going to let you know you violated the standard. And how I let you know the level of discipline that I inflict is going to be based
I
on the
like it.
situation or how many times I've told you. So it is I'm going to leverage these relationships, leverage this trust, leverage the dynamics of this team that's built the right way. And I'm going to make sure that they are holding the standard. And here's the catch, because they want to hold the standard, not because I'm making them. And that's a game changer. So if you're talking about being the parent of the group, if I'm leading like that, sure, it's a great analogy. If you're the command and control parent
Mm.
and you're just telling all your people what to do, well, then I don't know that the analogy holds as well.
Oh, dude, I love it. No,
Yeah.
it's something that we use a lot in the fire service where excuse me. Um where and I've used it myself when we bring on new leaders. And it's just like, hey man, you're like, you wouldn't let your kids stomp all around the house, and you know, generally speaking, the parents are the ones who rule the roost. So why are you letting it happen in the fire service? There's no
Mhm.
reason
Eh,
other than the fear of having hard conversations with other adults. And truthfully speaking, we're adults. We should be able to have we should
mhm.
cognitively at this point in our lives have the ability to have the hard conversations, be the recipient of the the JP, you messed up conversation, and we're going to sit down. We're going to figure out a way to make it better. And if I'm not, then that's 100% on me and in my my problem.
Yeah.
And kind of to that, a question that I get a ton, and truthfully speaking, I'll let you answer, and I kind of walk you through how I walk people who kind of reach out to me for answers to this. How do people go about having the those much needed hard conversations with, either their subordinates or even sometimes fellow leaders or their superior?
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to that question. I think first and foremost is understanding what we've already
Mm,
said. A lot of times we don't do all the things we need to do as a leader. So let's say we're command and control, or even just at a
mhm,
minimum, a detached leader, meaning those are my people. I don't interact with them a ton. They do their job. I'm here if they need me, that kind of thing. I'm a detached leader all the way to command and control. Well, when I lead like that, and maybe that's an apathetic way of leading or whatever the case may be, and then I go try to give the feedback, that's really difficult because now I'm giving feedback to somebody that doesn't know me, trust me. We don't have any kind of connection or relationship,
mm,
and that makes it very challenging. So I tell the leaders that I coach, you have a daily obligation. See, leadership is a way of thinking. I don't think leadership is a default. I don't think anybody or very few wake up every day from a childhood knowing how to lead. So you got to change the way you think. So as a leader, once I'm trusted with that role and I take it as a responsibility, not a reward, now I show up every day with a different thought process. That every day I walk in this door, my number one job is connect with my team, get to know them a little bit better,
mm,
do what I've got to do to build trust, follow through with my promises, right? Everything that builds trust, look out for them, fight for them, give them if we're talking about the firehouse, make sure they got the equipment they need, make sure that it's working properly, make sure I'm looking out for their safety, checking in on them when they need to. I'm doing that every day. And what a lot of leaders fail to do is any of that. So then when it's time to give feedback, I'm talking to somebody I don't know that well, or I know subconsciously they don't like me or trust me or respect me. And now I've got to give that guy feedback. That's really, really, really tough. So I think it starts with every day
mm,
showing up and understanding your responsibility as a leader, and that is to connect with your team. And once you have that, feedback's a lot easier. I ask people all the time, do you have a hard time giving feedback to the people that are closest to you in your life, family, friends? Typically we have less issue with that. Why? Because there's trust and connectivity there. So the first layer of that is do that every day. It makes it infinitely easier. The second is, and here comes the word again, put aside your ego. And when you enter into conversations, stop trying to be right and start trying to get it right. A much better approach. So, what does that require? Well, that requires skills, communication skills. So, you as a leader, you got the promotion. And if you don't take it as a reward, but you take it as a responsibility, one of those responsibilities is up leveling your skill set all the time. Because the higher you get up in the ranks of any organization, the more leadership matters. So when we start out at the
mm,
job, and maybe this way as a fireman, when I'm on the truck, I put out the fires, I go to the EMT calls or whatever, and that's what I do. So I need to know how to do those parts of the job really well. But as I move up in the ranks, I don't do those things on a daily basis anymore. So now I've got to know how to lead. So instead of going to take a CPR course, I've got to go take a leadership course because that's my daily responsibility now. So now I'm coming in every day, connecting with my people, building the relationships, building the trust, understanding as a leader that is my job, right? And then making sure that I am investing in my skill set so that when I do sit down and deliver a message, that I'm doing it the right way. My delivery is good. I understand how to communicate. And if you do that long enough, you start to build more and more trust, more and more connectivity, and if every day I'm looking out for my guys, I'm looking out for my people, and I'm investing in them and trying to grow them and help them reach their goals, it starts to be a very synergistic situation where giving feedback really is easy. But the reason people find it hard
mm.
is because they don't do any of that. And they just want to pop in, give the feedback, and pop out. And yeah, that's very challenging because
Yep.
A, it's hard to do, but B, they're probably not going to listen very well.
Dude, amen. Um, how much would you say is lost? Because I've so our town's gone through a few town administrators, and one of the complaints from one of our more previous ones was he never really checked in with his people during the day. He trusted them to do their job, and kind of left well enough alone. He'd go to his office, do his job. No, I never felt that he was a bad leader. I just that was just how he chose to run business. How much is really lost, would you say, by not going and just even just a simple pop in, like, hey, how was your night? Did you guys go out to the grocery store last night? You seen I know your car is in for maintenance or whatever. Just a simple, completely non-connected to work related conversation is lost when leaders don't just have those.
Yeah, it's one of the many ways we can show that we care. What you just described there is a
Mm,
detached leader, and you somebody like you who really understands leadership. He must have been doing some things well for you to think he was a pretty good leader. So I'm sure he was
mm,
he was dialed in some areas. But there's a lot of ways we can show care, and one of them is just asking questions and understanding the people around us. There's an old saying, you've probably heard it 100 times, and I've heard it attributed to different people like Theodore Roosevelt. I don't know who said it, but they don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And I don't know how you show care from your
mm.
office if you're never talking to anybody. And the second
It's
thing would
true.
be when I'm detached like that, I'm not engaging with my people. There's a lot of information shared in that small talk, or there's a lot of information shared. There's a lot you can glean in those conversations. So I'm missing an opportunity to get the information and data that I need. But most importantly is if I don't know my people, I don't know how we can have trust. And if they don't know me, I've seen a lot of leaders make this mistake too, is they don't let their people know them very well. Well, if I don't know you very well, you don't know me very
Mm,
well, how in the world do we build trust? Which trust is the foundation of any great team. So we're talking about, to this point, individual leadership. If you want to go to team building, which is another one of my passions, that's built on the back of trust. There's a lot of things we have to do to build trust. I don't trust people that I don't know. So I don't know why we would expect others in any other environment to trust people they don't know. So I think getting out of your office and getting out and getting to know people, letting them know you. Now, I heard Patrick Lencioni one time. He's the one that really championed the trust as the foundation. He's got his pyramid of team building, which is trust, and then conflict resolution, accountability, and then I can't remember the fourth one off the top of my head, but the last one is keeping an eye on the results. Commitment. That's the fourth one. Commitment. But the base of that pyramid is
mm,
accountability. I mean, is trust, right? And everything we do as a leader has to build trust. And when I don't invest, when I'm detached, I don't have that. And it'll really get in the way of my ability to lead, build teams, have them be connected, and like I said earlier, have everybody rowing the same direction.
mm. It man, just like you leave me speechless. I love it.
You're so
Um,
kind.
so right, so a leader, we in sometimes even if you have a solid cohesive team, I think there's always going to be times when the leader can lose a little bit of trust and connectivity with their team, whether it be based on a decision that they've made or um I mean, it's probably the best analogy I can come up with, a decision that they made or something that they've done, an action they've taken. How can a leader who has the ability to recognize, crap, man, I just lost a little bit of trust and connectivity. How do they go about rebuilding that trust and connectivity, even if it might take a little bit of time to get it back?
Yeah, depending on how big the mistake was, I think you can get it back pretty quickly. And the answer is own it. Right, I don't think people
Mm,
lose trust because you made a bad decision. I think they lose trust because everyone makes bad decisions. I think they lose trust because you didn't own it and you didn't communicate it well. So, you make a bad call, you make a bad decision. First and foremost, that there's are you making the decision based on accurate data? So if my default as a leader is I show up every day and talk and connect with my team, that's just a part of what I do, then I'm going to get a lot of information from them. And maybe I'm the main decision maker. That's great. I'm not a big lead by consensus kind of guy where everyone gets equal say. That doesn't work. But I do want to make my decision based on data from other people, especially if they're on the front
mm,
lines and I'm not. I see this a lot with leaders is as they move up in the ranks and they're no longer on the front line, they still think they have the same information that the frontline guys do, and they don't because they don't do it every day. So I need I need those frontline guys giving me information so I can make better decisions. And if I'm doing that every day and I make a bad call, those people subconsciously know that I made that bad call partially based on the data they gave me. So we all kind of in it together. And I don't think it kills
mm,
trust quite as much. If I don't listen to you and I don't reach out for your thoughts or your opinions on anything, then I make a bad call, it's going to be a little bit harder to earn the trust back. But even with all that said, I make a bad call and I come and look you in the eye and I say, "Hey, JP, I messed that up. That's on me.
Mm,
And here's what I'm going to do to do different next time or be better next time." Well, you can earn trust back pretty quickly that way. What a lot of leaders
mm.
do though is they try to blame other people why the mistake went wrong. Well, the call was a good one, but he did this wrong, so it didn't work. And you start doing those things, man, you'll lose your team forever.
Amen. Um, I love the concept of lead with data from people, but so one of the things that I've seen a lot in the fire service is people be like, "Hey, I want your input," and then of course, let's just say writing a new SOP for something, and everybody puts their input in, but then I'll use me, to protect the innocent. I'll use me as the offender. So I give an explanation and I'm like, hey, I think this wording needs to be like this because this, but it doesn't get used. And, the risk of, I think, including everybody's input all the time with everything, at least for my opinion, is that sometimes people feel like they have more buy in to the final decision than they really
Mhm.
do. Has that ever been something that you kinda run into? And if not, how could or regardless, how how do people go about sort of getting ahead of that? Your input was considered, but it doesn't play into the final decision kind of thought process.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I would say that I don't think everybody gets input, but I do think everybody's opinion should be listened to, right? So that doesn't mean you get
Mm,
input. That means you get listened to, and I as a leader, or we as a leadership team, however it works, will consider the input. But make no mistake, leaders have to rid themselves of ego, as we've said many times today. Well, so does everybody else. So when I give you my opinion and you don't take my opinion and you make another call, the thing that would make me mad is my ego, right? So at the end of the day, if I
mhm,
need my leaders to lessen the level of ego that they lead with, then I as a subordinate need to also lessen the level of ego that I, conduct myself with. So I think that
mm,
is and listen, everything we're talking about is very individualistic. So that the leader makes the decision. Well, my opinion wasn't included, or they took my opinion but didn't take it under enough because everything's me, I, me. That is the antithesis of a team. It
mhm,
is a we equation. So we are going to talk. We are going to formulate. And if my leader is somebody that I trust, or my leadership teams is a group of people that I trust, then I'm going to trust them to make the right call. And when they don't, they're going to own it, and we're going to continue to have the trust and move forward as a team. What you're talking about is symptomatic in so many organizations. In fact, I would say a majority of organizations, and that is selfish notions. And there's no room for selfishness in leadership. There's a couple rare exceptions to that, but for the most part, there's no place for selfishness. So everything's about. You said this earlier, but I want to inflate my level of importance because I want my opinion
mm,
included. Well, that's about me. What if my opinion wasn't the right one? I need to have the humility to admit that as well.
right. So, dude, you tickled on a hard with the eyes and the me's, and
Mhm.
my biggest pet peeve in the world. I have worked under a couple of different chiefs who my own thought process behind this is they don't use it in the possessive, but more of the responsibility to others. However, man, I gotta tell you, when they say, I have money in my budget, or I got this for
Mhm.
you guys, or you know, let me, or whatever the case is, I believe the intent behind it. So I guess have you seen that with a lot of people you've coached with, being like, listen, I understand your attempt at the taking responsibility, but we and us do a ton. Even me with I do have help from my wife in the background doing some things with the platform and some small ideas. But generally speaking, there is just a single individual doing it. But it's always an us and a me because my belief as a passionate leader is the platform of all the followers and the people that contribute because that's how we grow together is as a team. When somebody runs into these eyes and the me's, is it sometimes as simple as a conversation of, "Hey, you really need to rephrase how you're doing that because you sound pompous," or is it more of a, deep down mental block that this person may or may not have that they just can't understand?
I mean, it could be any of that, and I would say going back to something you said a second ago about even the Passionate Leader podcast is even, outside of you and your wife, that is not a one man or one woman show. You are the conglomeration of all the experiences you've had in your life and all the people that have invested in you. So even the JP that's showing up today is an amalgamation of everybody that's invested in you. So they play a part in this too, right? Everything everything
Mhm.
you're an incredibly sharp guy. So that's the result of you and also people that invested in you. So there is no one man show, even if it's a one man show. Uh, Secondly, is I think it really depends on. This goes back again. A deeper question is okay. I got you the gear. Or I did this for you. I think it depends on the person saying it and the work they've done leading up to that, or the
Mm.
connection they have and the trust they have. I think eyes and knees. I was talking to somebody I coached just this week, and I asked him the same question I ask a lot of people is he's going for a certain promotion, and I said, "Why do you want it?" And in a matter of 60 seconds, he said, "I or me" 12 times. I counted, and I told him flat out. I said,
Okay.
you're doing it for the wrong reason. You're doing it because you think it's a reward for all the work you put in. You're doing it so you can have the status and you can have the title. And until you change that perspective and you make it the responsibility we talked about to serve others, I want this role so that I can serve you better. That is the only way a leader can think.
Mm.
Then you're never going to be successful. So I think a leader who takes it as a responsibility to serve and shows up every day and does that, and that leader comes down and says, "Hey guys, I got you the gear you were looking for." I think it lands well. I think the leader who
Mm.
is command and control, detached, doing it for the wrong reasons, comes in because he wants the pat on the back, then it's not going to land well. So I
Mm.
think it really depends on the way that leaders position themselves within the team.
So obviously, when you coach, people are paying you to do so. I mean, this shows right there that you have no problem. It's having the needed and much necessary conversations. Has it ever come to kind of bite you in the backside? Or like, well, f him, and then like they never come back, or but people have been pretty receptive to it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna use the word again. People are gonna get sick of hearing it, but people who cannot
No,
put
use it.
aside the people who cannot put aside their ego, it now, and let me say this differently actually than I was originally gonna say it. People who can't put aside their ego tend to struggle with it. But I
Mm.
also have a responsibility as a coach to navigate that ego. I have a responsibility as a coach to turn the mirror back on them and find ways that they can accept that ego is their issue. So that is a skill I have to have as a coach is to show them the ego, show them how it's showing up every day, and show them how it's holding them back. But if I don't have the time and the margin to do that, then the people who push back
Mm.
typically are very ego driven, and I would tell any coach out there, any coach listening, been coaching for a very long time, you don't want to work with those kind of people anyway. And you will have your most success,
Mm.
not just from a job satisfaction standpoint, but just from a business growth standpoint when you coach the people who want to be coached and the people who push back on tough feedback, as long as my three check boxes are accounted for. My intent was good. I'm the credible guy to do it. And my delivery was right. If you can't handle that, then you don't need to be coached from me anyway. You need to move on to somebody else because, hey, after all, you apparently already have it all figured out.
Let me hit that again because I feel I need to use that a lot in my own. So intent, credibility, and delivery. Those are
Yeah.
the three.
Yep. Yep. It's just a very
So
simplistic model.
I
Yeah.
I'll give a brief background story of deliverability. So, of course, when I got promoted to lieutenant, we're talking now, oh man, probably 10, 12, almost 15 years ago now at this point. We had a lieutenant who has he since passed, so bless his soul. Um, he he was the last to show up and the first to want to push people out of the way at the end of meetings and get out of there. And it was so we used to have truck checks the first Monday of every month, and it would be listen, the quicker we get this done, the quicker we get home. So me, 22-year-old lieutenant full of piss and vinegar. And I'm like, listen, if the guys want to stay until midnight because they want to learn the rig better, we're gonna stick around. We're gonna make it, make it good for them. So
Mhm.
of course, it went on for a few months, and then one night during an officers' meeting, again like an adolescent, just jumped on it like fresh meat, and I went up one side and down the other. The whole if you don't want to be a leader, then just get the hell out of the way because you're just a waste of space. You're not doing anything to help us out.
Mm,
And when I got done, man, I felt great. 'Cause he got up and he walked out. He's like, "Well, I always said, before he walked out, he goes, I always said when it was no longer fun, it was done for me." So of course he walks out and I'm like, "I just did a really good job for this fire department."
mhm.
It wasn't until somebody who has helped me out a lot in my journey as a leader pulled me into my office and did the exact same thing to me. And he's like, was one of those, "Listen, your intent was really good. You are certainly and well, I'll use the checkbox." He goes, "Your the qualifications, you do have, the right knowledge and the requisite stuff." He goes, and he goes, "Delivery, dude, I screwed the delivery. I
Yeah.
absolutely screwed the pooch on the delivery." So, um, this box, your 3 boxes, I did not know about those, but looking back at it now, that's exactly where I missed. And I think honestly, a lot of times that's where you see a lot of leaders, at least counting back on my recollections and some instances of different leaders within my reach, is it's always the delivery. Is that a common thing, or where, generally speaking, have you seen leaders of those 3 things trip up the most?
Yeah, so I would actually challenge one thing, and obviously I wasn't in your head back then, but I would say for a lot of people in those situations when they deliver it that way, the intent is not actually in place. You may have partially
Okay.
good intent, but oftentimes the intent was to vent. The intent was to
Mm,
show him that I'm mad, not to make the situation or the person better. And the only intent that's valid is to make the situation, the person, or the team or the organization better. But oftentimes what we have is I deliver the feedback poorly because I was mad. And I was more interested in letting you know I was mad or venting that than I
mm,
was making you better. And I think so I talked about my core 4: humility, growth mindedness, authenticity, but one of the 4 was emotional intelligence. And the reason that's one of the core 4 is because you can't lead if you can't manage your emotions. Right. So it is our job as leaders. We are called to maintain the environment around us. We are called to maintain the morale around us. Like, that's the old analogy. Are we going to be a thermostat or a thermometer? Right? Do we come in the room and we
mm,
gaze the room and we act according to what we see, or are we the thermostat that sets the temperature for the room? And that is what we have to be as leaders. And when I can't manage my emotions, and I'm everyone around me walks on eggshells. They don't know, am I going to be in a good mood today, a bad mood today? I can't say this to him because he doesn't take that very well, or all the things that we say, then I abdicate my ability to lead in a lot of ways. So what happens in those situations a lot is, hey, this guy made me mad. I can't control that emotion. I can't manage it. Like, it's not the absence of emotion. We all have the emotion, but can I manage it to handle the situation
mm,
and deliver it correctly? And can I even go one step further? Can I manage my emotions to a level that I can actually channel my emotions, not just manage them, but channel them to motivate me to take the proper action? So it really requires you as a leader to manage the emotion. That's why you walk in any room, and typically the calmest person in the room is the leader. And can I
mm,
manage my emotion to a level where I don't vent, I don't take my anger out on you? And man, it's just so rare to find this, but it's such an important thing. So, I think people deliver things poorly because they lost the proper intent, and they just want to vent, and they don't want to, or they might want to use their venting to make the situation better. It's still a kind of a perverted intent. At the end of the day, the only intent that
mm.
works is making the situation better.
Man, and you know what, dude? As soon as you said it, you're right, man. I was angrier than a wet hen, and it just because it made me mad because I could see how the guys, there was no lack of there was a lack of respect and a lack of trust with him, because they're
Mhm,
like, well, he's always the last one to go.
mhm,
And thankfully, before he passed, him and I were able to sit down. And it was days later. Him and I sat down and we had a conversation. And he opened up about a lot of things that were going. The reason he wanted to leave is because it wasn't the greatest at home. So the sooner he could get out of the firehouse, the
mhm,
sooner he could get back to home. Because in the volunteer side, it goes from, you're at work, you go to the fire station for meeting, or you get a call, and now family always loses. So at that time, I was still in the volunteer side of the world, but dude, that's huge. And I think it's a great transition into the last of the ones, because it was a video that you posted that actually I think triggered me to reach out. And it
mhm,
was how leaders sometimes will lead with, with the whole fear in mind, or getting people to, and this is something that has been used up until recently, even with my own agency, of the fear or making people feel bad, tyranny type thing. And
Mhm.
the example that I can give before I'll set you free on the conversation is, so we're a volunteer agency, and we do not have a minimum call requirement. We do have, minimum this many trainings, blah, blah, blah. And we had recently gotten rid of some members who weren't really cutting it training wise and stuff like that. So we've lost some members that otherwise may fill some gaps here and there for response to emergencies. And we had a stretch where we had lower numbers at calls. And a couple of folks that even rank higher than I actually stood up in front of the meeting, and they're like, guys, yeah, we know it's volunteer, but you really need to start showing up more. When you walked in the door, it was, you signed up to help these residents in their times of need. And the time of the call was 5 in the morning on a Sunday. It's not like there was a ball game on or anything like that. So there really isn't much of an excuse. I'll tell you right now, it took a little bit of biting my tongue. I think it's finally grown back at this point because I have learned over the course of time the value of other people's time. So to that, and I don't want to paraphrase you in your video, but you talked about using fear to lead in the tyranny kind of concept. I feel we kind of maybe touched on it a little bit earlier, but as we're wrapping up, I kind of want to end talking about that. And then one last final, our anchor question that we always ask at the end, I'll give you. But how can leaders who do that now get a better understanding as far as how not to do it? Or conversely, how can leaders who don't do it see it so that they can stray away from it?
Yeah, so I'm going to use the example of your volunteer fire department, right? So that's a tough environment to lead in because people aren't being paid, and they could walk away whenever they want to. That means that the style of leadership we're discussing today is even more imperative. So if we look at, and I may have said this
Mm,
at the beginning, but the laws of human nature don't cease to exist just because you're in the walls of the firehouse. So humans need certain things, and once their need of food, water, shelter has been met, right? If we don't have those things, that's the first thing on our mind. That's our highest priority. But the minute those things are met, which in this country they're almost always met, then the next thing we need is a sense of belonging. And I don't know how you create that
mm,
culture or that environment when you lead out of fear, right? Because now it actually creates the opposite. Now you make me feel like I don't belong because if I do something wrong or I don't meet the exact requirement you wanted me to, you're not there to support me and grow me and develop me and help me. You're there to hammer me.
mm,
And I think every leader has to have a hammer in their tool belt, but I don't think the more you pull it out, the worse of a leader you probably are. So we need to use other tactics and tools to lead and not fear because it again that will only get what I said earlier is the minimum effective dose. When you threaten my job or you threaten to punish me as a way to motivate me, it'll motivate me just enough to not get punished. It will never give me the
mhm,
desire to show up at 5 a.m. Right? If you look at organizations that do this well and they build the right culture, those people want to show up at 5 a.m. for the call. Why? Because they want to show up to something they belong to, right? They're a part of it. And there's almost that fear of missing out element if they don't show up. And I think that you start to look at that if people are reluctant to do that or they're not wanting to show up or there is a bad attitude, then we've done something wrong culturally to build that. And what a poor, like I said earlier, what a poor leader does is they blame the person. What a great leader does is they blame themselves. And they say, what have we not created here that makes them feel like they don't
mm,
want to be here at 5 a.m. for the call? And I think the more a leader understands that, the less they're going to lean on fear. And I still go back to what we talked about earlier as well. It is easy to use fear as a motivation tactic. It's not effective, but it's easy because all I have to do is say, do this or you don't have a job. And then I can go back to what I was doing. That's easy. But doing it the right way and you want to build a
yeah,
team of people that will run through a wall for you, you got to do the other stuff we talked about in this podcast. So if you're a leader who leads with fear, I would greatly challenge you to revisit that notion or revisit that way of doing things based on the things that we've talked about today. And if you see it in your organization, I'm glad you asked this question, because we can talk about this all we want to, and talk about the way leadership's supposed to be. The harsh reality for a lot of people is they are not in organizations that lead that way. And it might be very hard to have the impact you want to have to cause the organization to change the way it leads. So sometimes you can lead the organization to better leadership culture. Sometimes you got to lead the organization.
We didn't even, so we're going to have another episode because we didn't even have a chance to talk about team building, and I want to definitely get into
Yeah,
that. So we'll have to schedule a time for that in the future.
sure.
So really, there's two questions left before we wrap it up and I get you on with your day. Is there anything that we didn't, I mean, aside from team building, that we didn't really cover that you wanted to kind of touch on today or anything like that?
Probably the only thing I would say is this: is if you want to be a great leader of others, it starts with being a great leader of yourself. The way I coach it is, you
Yeah.
can't lead others till you can lead yourself. You can't lead a team till you can lead others, and you can't lead an organization until you can lead a team. It's got to go in that order. It cannot go in any other order. So I would invite anybody here, if you look at the four core things I talked about: humility, emotional intelligence, growth mindedness, and authenticity, those are self-leadership traits. So we have to learn how to lead ourselves so we can be the best versions of ourselves,
Mm.
not just in the way we show up, but even, to manage our stress and manage our sleep and manage our health and all these things we have to do so that we can show up and actually execute the things we talked about today. So if I was going to give somebody a place to start, it would do a very honest audit of how well you lead yourself. And if you find that you're not leading yourself well, then that's a great place to start. And once you learn how to do that, you now have the moral authority and the knowledge and the skills to maybe start leading other people. And then once I can do that effectively, okay, maybe I can lead entire teams, and then it grows from there. So I would just encourage anybody who's looking for a place to start to improve their leadership, start investing in learning how to lead yourself a little bit better, and having the humility to admit that you should and could. And it's a great jumping off point to becoming a better leader.
Dude, I love it. So I don't know if you ever listen to any of the podcasts. So my last anchor question is always somebody starting their journey in the leadership world. What's your unadulterated advice? You just gave it. So I'm not even going to ask it because so
There you
for
go.
those that
There
want
you
to
go.
know Jason's anchor, the answer to our anchor question, go back 30 seconds and give it a listen, and then go back 30 seconds again and listen to it again, because that was absolutely gold.
Thank you so
Dude,
much,
thank
man.
you. I cannot thank you enough. This has been such a good conversation. We're going to get you back on and talk about team building, because that, again, very relevant to the fire service and really any service in general.
Yeah.
To the listeners and our viewers, thank you so much for listening to the Passionate Leader podcast. Actually, before I jump into that, if folks want to reach out to you, kind of give us some more information, maybe seek your services, what is a good way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can email me directly. That's Jason at jasongoggans.com. So Jason at Jason, Goggans.com. So direct email is the easiest way to do it.
Perfect. What I'll do is I will put a when I get you uploaded to the website and stuff like that, which will probably be in a few weeks, but I'll put your email address on there and maybe a link to the website. That way people can kind of reach out. Um, awesome, dude. Thank you so much. So, um, thank you, listeners. Thank you, viewers. Without you guys, this show really couldn't happen. Thank you for spending time with us today on the Passionate Leader podcast. If something in today's episode hit, please make sure that you're following both me as the Passionate Leader, and we'll get you the information for Jason. Will be in the actually. What's your handle on TikTok again? I do apologize. Black Wolf Leadership, correct?
Yeah, Black Wolf Leadership. Is that on TikTok as well as YouTube and Instagram?
Perfect. You're doing yourself a disservice if you're not following Jason across those platforms. So get out there and do it. And when you do it, consider the Passionate Leader as well. If something in
Absolutely.
today's episode hit, please make sure that you're liking everything, you're sharing these episodes, that you know that there's somebody out there that needs to hear it. If you want to be part of a deeper conversation, every Sunday night on TikTok, the Passionate Leader does go live with our kitchen table talks. Anybody can hop in. 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time every Sunday, with the exception of a few Sundays, such as Super Bowl Sunday. I think that should be a holiday on itself. We also take off Easter Sunday and the two main holidays, which would be Labor Day and Memorial Day weekend Sundays as well. If you want to be part of a deeper conversation, consider signing up for our Patreon, as that gets us into the Discord and we are able to have deeper conversations on a more personal level. And it also gives you first access to anything and everything passionate leader as far as where we're going to be for speaking engagements and stuff like that. As always, ladies and gentlemen, we'll end it how we always do. Be the leader that you needed when you first started your fire service journey. And no matter what happens, lead with passion, serve with humility, and leave no room for bottom feeders. Until we meet again, everybody, stay safe.